Hi guys! So today we are going to keep reading the BFG. It's been about a week since we last listened, and in the last chapter, Sophie went with the BFG to the dreamland and watched as he captured a really good dream and a nightmare. And then they went back to the giant land. And the next chapter is called A Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. And I think we're going to read this chapter and maybe a little bit of the next chapter, which is called Dreams. All right. A Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. And if you remember, the Trogglehumper is the name that the BFG gave to the nightmare that he collected. So I'm thinking from this title, maybe giving that nightmare to the Fleshlumpeater. And if you remember what the Fleshlumpeater is, he was one of the really nasty giants. They is always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. That means they're sleeping. 50 winks is, the expression is 40 winks. That means, oh, I'll just catch 40 winks. That means I'm just going to take a nap. But he's saying 50 winks because, you know, he says things topsy-turvy and all messed up. He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look. Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said, not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50 is spending about 20 years sleeping fast? I must admit that never occurred to me, Sophie said. You should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being who says he is 50 has been fast asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking. It's a funny thought, Sophie said. Exactly, the BFG said. So what I was trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he is 50 is not 50, he is only 30. What about me? Sophie said. I am 8. You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little children is spending half their time sleeping, so you is only 4. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You is only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snapper whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you. So the BFG is telling Sophie, like, you're actually young. Sophie's like, no, I'm not. And he's like, stop annoying me. I know things. I'm hundreds of years old. But is he right? Is she only 4 years old? No, that's not how time works. How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked. They is never wasting time snozzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. When do you sleep? Sophie asked. Even less, the BFG answered. I is sleeping only once in a blue baboon. That's another messed up saying. You might say once in a blue moon, because a blue moon is a special kind of moon and only comes every so often, but he's saying a blue baboon, which is just silliness, but it sounds like blue moon. Sophie, peeping out from her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs with their enormous mouths wide open, and they were snoring like foghorns. The noise was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. By gumfrog, he cried. I is just having the most wopsy-whiffling idea. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just you wait to see what I is going to bring about. He galloped off fast to his cave with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of his pocket. He rolled back the stone. He entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly. You stay where you is in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We is doing this lovely bit of buck-swashing both together. He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing. The one he had been carrying when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered. What's the BFG up to? What is he going to do? He has the trumpet in one hand. He still has the briefcase, and we know what's inside the briefcase. Those dreams he caught. And we know what we use a trumpet for. Trumpet is for sending dreams into little children's bedrooms. And we know the title of the chapter is A Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. So it seems like he's going to send the Trogglehumper dream, the nightmare, to the Fleshlumpeater. Peep your head up good, the BFG said. Then you will get a fine winkle of what is going on. When the BFG came near to the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He began moving slowly. He crept on his toes towards the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. They looked repulsive, filthy, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer. Then he stopped. He had reached the Fleshlumpeater. He pointed at him, then looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground and very quietly he opened the suitcase. He took out of it the glass jar containing the terrible, nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ouch, she thought. This could be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the Fleshlumpeater's face. The snoring, snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Every now and again, a big bubble of spit formed between his two open lips, and then it would burst with a splash and cover his face with saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirming, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips. He aimed the instrument directly at the Fleshlumpeater's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks, and then, whoosh, he blew. There's the picture of the BFG and the Fleshlumpeater. Wow, the BFG, who's enormous, looks tiny compared to the Fleshlumpeater. That's crazy. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting toward the giant's face. For a split second, it hovered above the face. Then it was gone. So what's that? It was the Trogglehumper, the nightmare. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it had all happened so quickly. Sophie couldn't be sure. We had better be skittling away quick to where it is safe, the BFG whispered. He trotted off for about 100 yards, then stopped. He crouched low to the earth. Now, he said, we is waiting for the gun and flames to begin. They didn't have long to wait. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the Fleshlumpeater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. Yow! Roared the Fleshlumpeater. Aye! Ow! He's still asleep, the BFG whispered. The terrible Troggle-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him. Serves him right, Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. Save us! Screamed the Fleshlumpeater, thrashing around madly. He is after me! He is getting me! The thrashing of limbs and the waving of arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch Such a massive creature, having such a mighty convulsions. "It's Jack!" bellowed the Fleshlumpeater. "It's the gruelful, grunicious Jack! Jack is after me! Jack is wackling me! Jack is spike-sticking me! Jack is splash-plunking me! It is the terrible, fright-swiping Jack!" The Fleshlumpeater was writhing about over the ground like some colossal, tortured snake. "Oh, spare me, Jack!" he yelled. "Don't hurt me, Jack!" "Who is this Jack he's on about?" Sophie whispered. "Jack is the only human being all giants is frightened of," the BFG told her. Do you know what Jack they're talking about? As a character from a story named Jack, and it would make sense that this character is scary to giants. Have you heard about Jack and the Giant Beanstalk, where the boy Jack gets these magical beans and grows a beanstalk to the sky, and he climbs up and he goes to see these giants, and they try and kill him, but instead he steals, I think, some gold from them, and then chops down the beanstalk while they're on it. And so, I don't know if the giants die, I can't remember how it ends, or if he just, tricks them and steals things from them. Giants is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer. So I guess it does end with Jack killing one of the giants. "Save me!" screamed the Fleshlumpeater. "Have mercy on this poor little giant, the beanstalk! He is coming at me with his terrible, spike-sticking beanstalk!" So that's talking about the story too. Jack grows the beanstalk. "Take it away! I is begging you, Jack! I is praying you not to touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk!" "Us giants," the BFG whispered, "is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We is knowing only that he is a famous giant killer, and that he is owning something called a beanstalk. We is knowing also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing, and Jack is using it to kill giants." They're misremembering this story. Jack does not use the beanstalk to kill giants, actually. So they've got it wrong. I don't even know if he actually kills the giants. We need to look up the story of Jack the Beanstalk. Maybe you know how the story of Jack the Beanstalk ends. Sophie couldn't stop smiling. "What is you grinning at?" the BFG asked her, slightly nettled. "I'll tell you later," Sophie said. So I think when it says slightly nettled, that's another way of saying, the BFG is a little bit annoyed. Why is Sophie grinning? And I think Sophie is grinning because she knows that this giant, who's really terrified of Jack and the beanstalk, shouldn't be so scared. That's not how the story actually went. Jack didn't kill any giants, I don't think. Here's the Fleshlumpeater having his nightmare. Here's the BFG. Here's little Sophie talking. There he is in the background having his nightmare. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an extent that he was tying his whole body into knots. "Do not do it, Jack!" he screeched. "I was not eating you, Jack. I was never eating human beings. I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in all my wholesome life." "Liar," said the BFG. Just then, one of the Fleshlumpeater's flailing fists caught the still fast asleep, meat-dripping giant smack in the mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring, gizzard-gulping giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leaped to their feet. What do you think is going to happen with the giants? I think they're going to start... They're not going to understand that this was an accident because they don't seem like very understanding creatures. I think they're going to start fighting each other. "He is swiping me right in my mouth," yelled the meat dripper. "He is bone-swoggling me smack in the guts," shouted the gizzard gulper. The two of them rushed at the Fleshlumpeater and began pounding him with their fists and feet. The wretched Fleshlumpeater woke up with a bang. He awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and in the bellowing, thumping, rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another either got stepped upon or kicked. Soon all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and kicked and scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed. Noses went crunch. Teeth fell out like hailstones. Wow, there's some really powerful figurative language there. Teeth fell out like hailstones. A hailstone is a very small piece of ice that falls from the sky. I've never thought of teeth coming out, just coming out, just raining down everywhere like little hailstones. That's a great simile that Roald Dahl is using. Here's a picture of the fight, which they're calling a free-for-all. Like everyone's just going at everybody else. Can we see that? Oh my goodness. The giants roared and screamed and cursed, and for many minutes the noise of the battle rolled across the yellow plain. The BFG smiled, a big, wide smile of absolute pleasure. I is loving it when they is all having a good toughin' rumble, he said. They'll kill each other, Sophie said. Never, the BFG answered. Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at one another. Soon it will be getting dusky, and they will be galloping off to fill their tummies. They're coarse and foul and filthy, Sophie said. I hate them. As the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly, We certainly was putting that nightmare to good use, though, wasn't we? Excellent use, Sophie said. Well done, you. So now I'm remembering that the BFG and Sophie had talked about how they wanted to get rid of these giants so they wouldn't eat human beings anymore. And now they found a way to kind of annoy the giants, make them fight each other, but they're not dying, they're not killing each other, they're not going anywhere, and they're not learning a lesson, they're not learning to be nicer. So it kind of seems like they found a way to annoy the giants, but is this a way they're going to really get rid of them or cause them to change? I don't think so. The next chapter is called Dreams. The big friendly giant was seated at the great table in his cave, and he was doing his homework. What? Giant having homework? Sophie sat cross-legged on the tabletop nearby, watching him work. The glass jar containing the one and only good dream they had caught that day stood between them. The BFG, with great care and patience, was printing something on a piece of paper with an enormous pencil. What are you writing? Sophie asked him. Every dream is having its special label on the bottle, BFG said. How else could I be finding the one I am wanting in a hurry? But can you really and truly tell what sort of dream it's going to be simply by listening to it? Sophie asked. I can, the BFG said, not looking up. But how? Is it by the way it hums and buzzes? You is less more right, the BFG said. What he means is you are more or less right, but instead he said you is less or more right. Every dream in the world is making a different sort of buzzy hum music, and these grand swashbuckling ears of mine is able to read that music. By music, do you mean tunes? I is not meaning tunes. Then what do you mean? Human beings is having their own music, right or left? Right, Sophie said. Lots of music. And sometimes human beings is very overcome when they is hearing wondrous music. They's getting shivers down their spindles. Right or left? He means shivers down his spine. Right, Sophie said. So, the music is saying something to them. It is sending a message. I do not think the human beings is knowing what that message is, but they is loving it just the same. That's about right, Sophie said. But because of these jump-squiffling ears of mine, the BFG said, I is not only able to hear the music that Dreams is making, but I is understanding it also. What do you mean, understanding it? Sophie said. I can read it, the BFG said. It talks to me. It is like a language. What does he mean by language? What real word does he mean? It is like a language. What does he mean? I think it means like a language. It's like a language that the dreams are talking to him. And he understands like what kind of dream they are. I find that just a little hard to believe, Sophie said. I'll bet you is also finding it hard to believe in quagwinkles, the BFG said, and how they is visiting us from the stars. Of course I don't believe that, Sophie said. The BFG regarded her gravely with those huge eyes of his. What does the word gravely mean? He regarded her gravely. What is he thinking about Sophie right now? Is he proud of her? Is he upset with her? Is he worried about her? We know from before that when she has said that she doesn't believe something, he is telling her, no, you should believe that, and kind of has argued with her, but now he just is looking at her gravely. What do you think that might mean? It means like seriously, like this is true, Sophie, like it's true. Quagwinkles, they can visit us from the stars. I hope you will forgive me, he said, if I tell you that human beings is thinking they is very clever, but they is not. They is nearly all of them, not muchers and squeak pips. I beg your pardon, Sophie said. The matter with human beings, the BFG went on, is that they is absolutely refusing to believe in anything unless they is actually seeing it right in front of their own schnozzles. Of course Quagwinkles is existing. I is meeting them oftenly. I is even chatting to them. He turned away contemptuously from Sophie and resumed his writing. It's like he doesn't want anything to do with her. Sophie moved over to read what he had written so far. The letters were printed big and bold, but were not very well formed. Here is what it said. This dream is about how I is saving my teacher from drowning. I is diving into the river from a high bridge, and I is dragging my teacher to the bank, and then I is giving him the kiss of death. There it is. Picture. The kiss of what? Sophie said. The BFG stopped writing and raised his head slowly. His eyes rested on Sophie's face. I is telling you once before, he said quietly, that I is never having a chance to go to school. I is full of mistakes. They is not my fault. I do my best. You is a lovely little girl, but please remember that you is not exactly Miss Knowing Everything yourself. I'm sorry, Sophie said. I really am. It is very rude of me to keep correcting you. So it sounds like the BFG did not mean the kiss of death. He just made a mistake. I wonder what he really meant. The opposite of life. The kid is saving the teacher, the kiss of life. This is really interesting that the BFG reminds Sophie, like, I didn't go to school. I make a lot of mistakes all the time. Don't keep pointing them out to me. I just make mistakes. It's okay. Like, I don't need to know every single time I make a mistake. I wonder if any of you have felt that, where you're like, look, like, I'm just trying my best. I made a mistake. It's okay. Stop pointing it out. Has anyone ever felt like that? Like, I make mistakes. It's okay. I have felt like that before. I think everyone has felt like that. I think some people feel like they make more mistakes than other people, and sometimes it can be hard if people keep pointing out, this is a mistake, that's a mistake, you didn't do it right. So we have to remember everyone is good at things and not so good at things, and you have your strengths and the things that are harder for you. And for the BFG, words and school is hard. But what is really easy for the BFG? And what can the BFG do that Sophie can't do? He can understand the dreams by just listening to them. I mean, that is crazy. That's an amazing talent. That's so cool. To be able to listen to the dreams and know what they're about, what they're saying, it's really special. I want you to think about something that you are good at. It doesn't have to be as special as the BFG, listening to dreams, but do you have a talent, or is there something that you feel like you're good at? It could be a subject in school. It could be like, I just feel like it really comes easily to me doing multiplication, or it's really easy for me to read a book, or I really enjoy doing science experiments and it comes easily to me to understand science. What do you do that is kind of your talent or special for you? Maybe you really enjoy drawing and you can draw really well. Maybe you are really physical and you can do the monkey bars really well, or play soccer really well, or maybe you are really good at figuring out riddles, or maybe you're really funny and you can make really funny jokes. What is your talent? And for your response to read aloud today, I want you to make a video and tell me, what are you really good at? What is your talent? It might not be as special as the BFGs, because that's pretty magical, but just something that you are good at, or you feel good that you can do that. I think for me, I've always felt like I'm really good at keeping track of time. Like when I need to do something, when I have appointments, how long it will take me to get work done. And that's really helpful when you're a teacher, because you can think about the whole school day and know how much time things will take and when to start and when to end. So that's like, I feel like I'm always really good at knowing the time and knowing how long things will take and being on time. So that's kind of my special talent. I want to hear what your special talent is, okay? So leave a video response and tell me, what are you good at? Could be as simple as drawing pictures. It could be as complicated as creating funny riddles. So think about it for yourself, and we're going to stop there for today. All right. Bye, guys.